Welcome to the Rise to Thrive podcast with Matt
and Brooke,
where we embrace what it means to be human and explore how to become the most expansive versions of ourselves through vitality, connection, and play.
Expect honest conversations, transformative stories, and playful shenanigans as we unpack what it means to claim a life of your own creation.
Ready?
Let's rise.
I'll offer just, if I may, just offer a quick little prayer. Since we're all sitting with
Please
cacao,
do.
it'll be very brief. I know you and I could get lost in the prayer sauce, just like Bryce, but we'll keep it concise with this. Breath in and breath out. Oh, Creator, oh, Great Spirit. Thank you for this day, a grand rising on this magnificent day of creation. We sit here with the medicine of cacao desde Ecuador and other places of origin to call in your protection, your guidance, your activation and amplification of the frequency of spoken word, of the symbols, of the messages and metaphors and parables that are to weave in and through the coming moments in this quantum realm of sharing space while in different physical spaces. I thank you for the life of the two souls who have invited me onto their podcast, this Rise to Thrive, as we as a collective re-ember the fires that lay dormant at the collective heart. In this moment, we call in our guides and guardians who oversee the frequency of the internet, of these computers, of these devices of recording our frequencies so that they too can reach the hearts and souls of those who are dehydrated and malnourished from the magic and medicine that is the spark of belief and the seeds that will grow into the gardens that our children will nourish themselves with the fruit. May we call in all those souls and spirits who are coming to our aid to dance, to sing, and to play while we come forth as revolutionaries of love and the most magnificent time to be alive. And so it is, and so it shall be. Gracias, la medicina de cacacita. Blessed be this holy day. You!
Yay!
Bless you, brother. All right.
All right.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another Rise to Thrive podcast. I'm your host, Matt.
And I'm Brooke.
And today we have another magical guest. He's a leader in the men's work movement, a steward and advocate for the medicina of cacao, a storyteller, an explorer, a wayshower. He is a Renaissance man for the revolution. With over 20 years of experience in event production, he's here to create expansive spaces for people to access and amplify the genius of their heart, mind, and soul. All to be of service, to be put to good use, and to create the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. A prayerful poet, Jamie Lightheart, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you, brother. Thank you, sister. It's good to be here.
So great to have you.
The prayer poet himself, everybody. And you understand why. And you probably already understand why, just based on that introduction.
And thank you for that beautiful invocation. And I know we're all sitting with some cacao at the moment and feel very blessed to be in your presence and to share space with you. We're excited to dive in.
Yeah, I know.
Equally excited.
Takes us back. We went where we met, where we got to dive into a beautiful portal at the Remembrance gathering. Remembrance 2, was it? Last year? Yep, where we got to co-create a beautiful space called the Sanctuary, or the Silly Sanctuary, right?
I mean,
The
I think that
sanctuary.
was a low-key nickname that
Behind the scenes.
those of us behind the scenes.
Yeah, where people can come and offload a lot of the heaviness that perhaps they have felt in the earlier times before the night fell and came into a space that Jamie was really, I feel like, you are our man, you are our leader, you are the visionary of this whole space. And yeah, we created something really beautiful there. And are you actually going to be, you're not going to really be co-creating with us
That's
the
a
way
great
that
question.
you did last year, right?
I'm lead production on the entire R3 Remembrance 3 this year. So I'm overseeing full-on production, which will still have an influence on the sanctuary, on Womb in the Woods, on all of the groups that gather, And so, yeah, I'll be supporting from a different angle for you and Bryce and Tiff.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Excited for that. Hey, everyone. Just wanted to jump on here quick and give you guys some love and shout you out. We've been doing this podcast for now 2 months. It's wild to think. And we've been having a lot of fun doing it.
So if you are having fun on this journey with us, make sure to like the episodes and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then give us a follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as a 5-star rating.
And if there is a notification bell, make sure to hit that so you don't miss an episode.
All right, back to the show.
See you in there. And maybe before we get into a little bit of your backstory, why don't you share with us and with the audience, what does that space mean to you, and how do you envision its contribution to what happens at Remembrance?
It's a great question. With a space like the sanctuary, inside an experience like Remembrance 3, where the organization Sacred Sons has evolved from men's only experiences, multi-day experiences, initiatory rites of passage, to bringing in the village. So 2 years ago, we evolved the men's work movement experiences, the embodied masculine experiences, the immersion, to have Remembrance. And Remembrance is a space where we have men, women, children, and beginning to draw elders and wisdom keepers into the space. And at these experiences, everyone is placed onto a team. And throughout the days, you're gathering with your team that are co-ed teams with a leader and co-facilitators. Once the teams break into the evening, all of the magic, all of the energy, all of the moved trauma, all of the stuckness that has a place to go needs a place to go. And the sanctuary is that space. So when we speak of integration, when we speak of aftercare, that's the core intention of the sanctuary. And to make it beautiful. One of my first mentors, Pam Rose, in Chicago, she said, whatever you do, Jamie, make it beautiful. And so these years in festival production and large-scale, small-scale gatherings, when we come into a space and it already softens, and we already have a space to dissolve a bit and surrender, then all of the quote-unquote work has a clearer channel to move through. So 2 years ago, I get a call from Bryce. He's like, hey, buddy, where you at? I was like, I'm in Ecuador. He's like, of course. And he invited me into co-producing the sanctuary. And many years ago, when I first came to be with Bryce and we were producing men's events, I always shared with him, I said, hey, dream into the ethereal plane, your wildest imagination of what this space could be like. And we'll land on whatever realistic cloud we can land on with the optics and production and the tangibles, budget, all of these things. And so that year one of Remembrance was beautiful. Like we towed up a trailer and we splashed this turn of the century dining hall for Boy Scouts into the sanctuary. And this last year was really powerful having the two of you, because these spaces need an eclectic scope of input. Meaning if it's only me or Bryce and Tiff, we're not going to be able to reach as many people as we would be if we have more people influencing the space. And we also need leadership to guide the space, as you two have so graciously reflected on to me. So what the sanctuary is it holds the sacred silly. It holds a place for a cacao activation. It holds a place for a squish area, for tea to be served. It holds a space for body workers to come. It's a space that there's no transactional experiences happening. So anyone who comes in there to offer body work, it's a full offering. And so there's no programming in there other than each evening we'll have the open mic, like last year, and you could say poetry or songs. We had a cacao activation. And we also, one of the most important pieces that's at the sanctuary is the grief altar that Tiff creates. And so this is a space where people have been doing the work all day. They're in their groups. They've never experienced what they're experiencing from their generational trauma and their movement of energy and being seen and heard. And now they have a soft space to land. And that's what the sanctuary is.
Literal squish to land, to come
Literal
in through those
squish.
doors.
You dive in the front door and you're bound to land on some squish.
Yeah, the piles. I mean, that entire trailer was packed with pillows,
Pillows
and
and-
fluff and rugs. I mean, this place was like transformed. I love that you mentioned it's a Boy Scout hall. So just picture I don't even know what they call them, the Boy Scout chiefs or like
The leaders.
the leaders, you know, in these old photos and their flags and just so
The uniforms and
yeah, like we took this space that was just like kind of crusty and creaky and kind of eerie in a way and dropped the ceiling and just created kind of this like yeah, like tea loungy, like low light pillows, like a lot of oranges and reds, and the lighting in there was amazing too. Whoever provided that lighting as well. Like we had a full lighting guy for that room. And it was just the transformation. It's like we come to these events for transformation, right? And it's like we got to even experience the transformation of that space.
yeah.
It had its own transformation as well. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to witnessing what it turns into this year. So, there's a little backdrop for everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you for
for
That's where
coloring
we
that
met.
in for us. Yeah.
That was our origin story of our relating. And another piece to feather into that is for the entire process to be a creative process. Even when we have the trailer towed up and we're going north on I-5 and literally a tire blows off going 70 miles an hour, and we have the moment where everything is in that trailer and we stay calm, and all the work that we do on site is now reflected into the real world moments that everything can go sideways. And then we're able to bring the, as you name, the marigold and red and splash the entire place so that it transforms to be a reflection of how we are seeking to transform. And this moves into the power of story, the power of the set and setting influencing how we engage with, as my elder shares, you'll know what story you're in by the cast of characters around you. And I would add to that of the set and setting, and that then influences the narrative both internally and externally.
Yeah, well said. I mean, that's what the work's for, is to be able to carry that back into our lives. And when we're faced with crisis or moments of being tested, it's like the opportunity for demonstration of what we've integrated, what the work we've done has stuck with us. And wow, that was a wild story. I remember hearing when you guys arrived that blessed that nobody got hurt, and in the middle of the night you managed to, I think, swap U-Hauls, and it's like our commitment remains strong. We have a place to be and intentions to create, and we've got to make it happen. And
thank God it happened to you guys and not us, because we probably would have handled it very differently. And I think that's something that you, Jamie, got to illuminate even for Matt and I in that experience, the way that you dance with not feeling like the stress or the timeline, and the intentionality of dropping in with one another, and the ceremony spaces that we created, even when there was, all the stuff that we needed to get done. And we're here sitting and connecting together as a team. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, dude, we have so much shit we need to do right now, and just like noticing those thoughts of how I would operate in Brookland. And Jamieland I was invited into Jamieland in a different way of creating and connecting. And you mentioned that the other day about creating, being part of production and bringing more of that into that space, because I can imagine how chaotic it is to be producing these pretty big events and the stress. So it's amazing that you can come into a space like that and remind us of what's actually important and what is actually quote unquote productive.
Yeah, thank you for naming that. It's as cartographers of culture, we bring poetry back into the language. We're the map makers, so others then can use these orienting mechanisms to find their own way through. And I grew up in the old ways of by any means necessary, sacrifice your body, your mind, your heart, and your soul. I'm so grateful for my father. My origin story is I grew up in the cornfields of northern Illinois. My father was a carpenter. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. I've been on job sites since I was a little boy. And I watched my father sacrifice his physical well-being, his mental well-being, his emotional body. And so I lived in that, and I took that on for a few years until it just didn't feel like my story. So now fast forward, decades into producing in-person experiences. I spent a decade in the yoga world, opening yoga studios, leading teacher trainings, community events. That evolved into the men's work movement that then cascaded into festival production, both small scale and large scale. And I'm just coming off of a festival production in Big Bear, California, over solstice in Tiraimi, as the Celtic wheel turns, Litha, and invited in for one scope. And then once I was on site, the scope evolved. And as we collectively shift the internal culture of who's producing these experiences, that is going to have a ripple effect into the collective. And the most straightforward metaphor that most can digest is similar to someone who prepares and cooks your food. You're going to feel the energy, whether it was stressful or whether it was full of love. Same thing with going to an experience, a one-day event, an evening event, a multi-day experience, a week-long festival. If the producers and the people that are in charge of curating the entire space are stressed, are dysregulated in their nervous system, are not prioritizing self-care, we're going to feel that as participants. And so this last week was a whole shift in reset. And we circled up, even though 9 a.m. production call, and I get the reins passed to me, and like, actually, Jamie, will you lead? And I was like, we go outside, we burn some sage, we call on some spirits, and we do a simple check-in. And the way that that influenced each person in that group, I didn't even need to know verbally, but they came up to me throughout the day. They were like, thank you for that moment of pause. Mm-hmm. And so in the most chaotic time of our human existence as a collective, taking a moment, devoting a sacred pause, taking a breath, there's always time for one breath. And sometimes that's all it needs. And we can still be in a very new way of productivity. And so I appreciate you highlighting that. I'm in a deep tributary right now of a lot of role responsibility for some very impactful in-person experiences. And I was so grateful to have you two also as guides for me, that you were open to being in that space of reorienting how we produce these experiences.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, if you guys didn't know, the 3 pillars of Rise to Thrive are vitality, connection, and play. If you want to squeeze more juice out of life, then join our free community on School.
This is about reclaiming your vitality, feeling more connected, and honestly, bringing more energy and play back into your life. And it's also where we'll be the most active. Real-time conversations, updates, all of it.
So if you're ready to go deeper and stay connected with us in real time, hit the link in the show notes and join the tribe inside. I mean, it was so needed. Like Brooke was saying, I mean, many of us were coming in with some deep grief to move through, myself and Brooke and everyone. And to have those drop-ins, which, at first felt like, oh, we're going to just logistically get oriented before we leap into action. But having these like 3 to 4 hour ceremonies, which they felt like to us, they really were, of deep presence and listening and prayer and intention and space holding was so beautiful and so transformational, arguably more transformational than like being in the work, It's so potent, these in-between moments where we get to just be present with other human beings and share what makes us human. And I'm so grateful for that, for those spaces. So, as much as we were confronted at the beginning, a little triggered of like, we got a list of stuff to get to. There's nothing in here and the guests are coming tonight. Like it's amazing how when our intentions are in the right place and our hearts are, how like time dilates for us. It's like, okay, your priorities are straight and the stuff will get done. It always manages to get done.
And I really appreciate you sharing that because, for those of you listening and watching on this podcast, until we've been in that set and setting, I have now a lot of experience with people looking at me and we're like, we have participants or guests coming in 48 hours. Jamie, why are we stopping to check in where we came from, to check in with a prompt? There's nothing on the walls. We actually haven't even swept yet. What
Yeah.
are you doing? And there is that beautiful friction moment
Mm-hmm.
where I can observe people being like, why is Jamie so calm right now? Why is he not freaking out? Why is his regulated nervous system actually triggering mine?
Mine. Yeah.
True.
Why is his calmness? And you name something that is exactly what I believe the most powerful form of protection, of amplification, of our existence in this world, which is presence.
Mm-hmm.
Presence being the most powerful superpower.
Yeah.
Meaning if I'm in a future story or a past story, I'm more susceptible to the stress, the anxiety, the narratives that keep me blocked from my own abilities to fully see what's present and be in a responsive engagement rather than a reactive engagement.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so while there's the tendency for a lot of these conversations to be on flight, fight, freeze, or fawn in these places of a dysregulated nervous system, there's also needed to be a lot of conversations on, okay, what are the tendencies when we are in a calibrated nervous system? Because our collective is so dysregulated. And
Yeah.
hearing you guys say it, there's like some laughter in it, but there's also a lot of deep truth, because then
Mm-hmm.
one of my core principles in any production, every production actually, is not that it's just of the thing we're doing in this moment. If I have a responsibility to lead others, it goes beyond just the 4-day event that we're producing. It is my responsibility, my kuleana, to empower those to step on deeper to their path of service, so that when they go to their households with children that are crying and needing their attention, when they go back to the boardroom, when they go back to their school workload, when they go back to 5 o'clock traffic, that the very principles that we used in that event production, they're able to weave into their integration aftercare to shift their daily habitual lifestyle choices, so that it just doesn't become a cool event that feels like it was a dream, and that they've used those tangible abilities, skills, and modalities into their everyday life. And that's what really
Yeah.
excites me the most.
Yeah. I love that you speak to that, because I remember going to my first transformational festival, and it totally did change my life. And I was like, yo, I want to make my life a living festival, basically. But I wanted to bring, like, I remember coming back from that and really integrating and journaling and feeling like I wanted to bring it into my life. But there's so many people that go to these things as an escape,
Mm-hmm.
from their reality. They go and they have this weekend that's a dream, and then they're like, oh, back to my life, and isn't actually bringing what they just experienced into their day to day, which I feel like the point of these gatherings is it's a microcosm of what could be at the macrocosmic level, right? But I'd love to ask you, how did you get to such a regulated state?
That's a
Like,
great
what is your
question.
journey? Because I'm
That is
sure,
a
I mean, maybe
that
you've
is
always
a
been like that, but
No,
Doubtful.
that is not the case. That is very much not the story, and I can speak very clearly to it now. And there's one piece that I'll track, and then we'll go into that, because that needs to go into my origin story to provide the two of you and your audience a very clear pathway that this was not always the way that I was and engaged with this flow of energy within myself. And the piece around festivals, like the inception of festivals was created long ago for a place for people to be in their most WYRD, weird state of existence in the human form. Not with the intention to bring that direct weirdness back into the collective, into the village, but for that place to have an ability to express itself somewhere, so that it was clear and there wasn't a suppression once the prescribed norms of a village or a society needed to be honed again. And so I feel like that's really important to name, because I have so many acquaintances and friends. I'm very discerning with the language choice, because there's that building of trust for those friends, for soul family, for ohana. And I feel a lot of these words get misinterpreted and misused. And allyship is the most powerful relationship aside from the relationship we have with ourself and our soul. Meaning, in the world we live in, we might not have every meal together or build a village together, but allyship is really important. And so bringing that back to these festivals that can be transformational experiences, or they can just be a moment to check out. And no right or wrong. I've had to go through a lot of judgments in these spaces and these scenes now being a part of festivals around the world. And some people, it is their medicine to go check out.
Mm.
Some people, it is just to go be one big party and then go plug back in. And again, not right or wrong or good or bad or this and that, like really breaking down a lot of these projections that we as a collective have in these spaces. And for others, that medicine is going to move through them. And by medicine, I mean how it impacted their mindset, how it impacted their heart, how it impacted how they can show up in the world and have a place for their artistry and their passion and their love and their weird perspectives about the world. It's like, oh, you could build a stage out of bamboo and then put fire dancers on it, descending from the top while a DJ plays a saxophone and there's somebody spinning on their head. It's like, if that's possible, then what can I step into? It's not going to be that wild extreme, but just writing daily might be an extreme. So now I can go back and like, oh, cool, I can write daily. And somebody's like, Jamie, how are you correlating the fire dancers on a stage to a daily devotional practice? And I believe that's what the power of these large-scale in-person gatherings can be, which is so often people put such a high pressure on, I've got to transform all these parts of me, and then I've got to integrate them. And then when they go back into the village, back to the city setting, back to their blood family, back to their day-to-day, it actually can create different ripples of trauma because now there's a deeper, now we're speaking to one of the highest collective wounds. I'll take a step back. As my elder shares, we live in a time where the collective disease of disconnection is the plague of our time. So the plague of our time, the disease of our time, is the collective disease of disconnection. Disconnection from self, disconnection from nature, disconnection from spirit, whatever your belief is in spirit, and disconnection from other. In that, the sense of belonging is a core wound in the collective. As my dear brother Hunter shares, we live in an orphan archetypal system, which is we belong everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. So where is my sense of belonging, especially in a world that has taught me and patterned and programmed me that outside of self-worth, outside of self-value, outside of self-identity? The code switch in this, and by code switch, I mean the shift in perspective of what is my current reality and how am I meeting it in juxtaposition with where I think I should be rather than precisely where I'm at. In that place, the world that's been created is designed to be disorienting. We are designed to stay busy. Rather, the world has been designed for us to stay busy, for us to stay distracted. And this will be a segue into my origin story, because I too am no different. I'm no different. And so coming back to your piece, Brooke, of sharing like your experience with your first transformational experiences, having more conversations such as this will then encourage people to say, you know what? I will go to that yoga retreat. I will go to that festival. It's terrifying for me, but I will go, because that's the only thing that's going to change the narrative. So it just doesn't stay this reinforcing echo chamber, a vacuum of what people perceive to be a festival to be. So I'll pause there to see if anything comes up before going into the origin story, because there's a lot of density in the language of what I just shared too.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I mean, no, I think it's great. I think, thank you for speaking to that. And and it's an evolution as well in the festival thing. Because, of course, I went, my first festival, I partied very differently than the way I party now. Right? It was my gateway into like, oh my God, I'm wide-eyed. And there's so many different ways you can experience it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was just the little planting of seeds. And then the more I went into these spaces, the more I evolved and changed and transformed as well into a totally different role, being one, like, I'm here to just fully be in it and party and experience it, to now, like, oh my gosh, now I get to be co-facilitating and creating these spaces and being that person that's experienced it for the newcomer, right? That we were talking about that with conscious growth. gathering that we did last year too, when somebody's never been to a festival like this, and we are like, we get to hold it down and anchor it, like what we're doing and holding the space for them, and as they're wide-eyed into this whole journey. So it's a whole evolution and experience. So I love that, yes, you bring that up. It's like every experience is perfect for that person of where they're at. And maybe it wants to be, it's an escape and they're having fun and they're being in joy and they're connecting in some way. And that's beautiful. And maybe it will be a jumping off point for somebody in their own evolution of consciousness and wanting to be of service. Because that's what it led me down ultimately, is wanting to serve in this way, and how beautiful these gatherings can be to really advance someone's, like evolution. Right? Like if I hadn't touched point with that first festival, who would I be today?
Yeah.
Like who's to say?
How expressed would you be?
Right.
It's like when you get that permission in these spaces, I feel like that's a big part of it, is witnessing the full spectrum of expression of human being here, whether it's through their garb or through how they sing or move or chant, or their art, the physical art that they bring, and you're like, what? Like, how did you even think to turn that into this? And wow, what a beautiful creation, like it really is such a variety, but it gives permission, like you were saying, making the connection from that elaborate stage you painted with the fire dancers to, oh, I can give myself permission to then be a little bit more expressed here, to try it on for size and see how it feels. And then I get to carry a little bit of that back of like, I get to be a little bit more free in my life. I'm going to be not so timid to let people see this side of myself. And I think, like you mentioned, these conversations might be the thing that gives someone the nudge to then say yes to the next invitation or the next opportunity to gather. Because I think the world that is so disconnected, like you mentioned, can benefit from a lot more connection. And these gatherings really do, I feel like at the core is about that, is to connect and to love one another and to realize the dialogue that's being shared, whether it's through social media or the news, it's like we are not as disconnected as we think we are.
Yeah, and I love this thread that we're in this tributary, so we're going to float down it together, which is to gather. It's aside from our breath, it's one of the most intuitive aspects of our evolution of the human nation. By that, I mean, we've discussed in the last few moments, festivals, large-scale gatherings. Still, most of the population isn't going to go to these. We take a step back, go to a concert, go to a paint night with your friends, go to a movie in the park, go to a pottery class. Any of these in-person gatherings where we're finding, as you named, new ways to express ourselves and also be inspired by our peers rather than being in direct competition. And so as we evolve our interpersonal relationships and we are finding new ways to express ourselves, just as children take that influence from their surroundings, we too are receiving that imprint and that impression. So again, that set and setting. You'll know what story you're in by the cast of characters around you. And so oftentimes on the final day of gatherings and the initiatory rites of passage, because in this, what I'm speaking to also is that for the last years, I've been producing in-person experiences for Sacred Sons, but also with a few other organizations. One of them is Abundant Brotherhood and Leadership, where we're taking men from the sales entrepreneurial realm into nature and providing multi-day experiences. I also walk with an elder who walks the Red Road in the Lakota way. His name is Mark, and we've been taking men for overnights out on the land in the mid-desert. So we go into a nipi and sweat lodge to purify, and then put men out on the hill with no food, no water for an overnight experience. This is also where I walk my vision quest, which is 12 days on the land, 4 days no food, no water, in the middle of a 10-foot circle to go to find a vision. These aren't the ways that I was born into. Yet these are the ways that were calling to me if I was open and willing to let go. And this is a very important piece of my story in the collective. If I was open to letting go of the narrative that brought me to this moment while honoring everything that brought me to this moment and being open to the unknown. As my elder Uma shares, trust fall into the trust fund of great mystery. And so as we trust fall into the trust fund of a different type of reciprocity, we find ourselves in great mystery, gran misterio. And in this place, anything is possible. Yet it requires the first piece, which is to turn your gaze within and start knocking on your own door. So coming back to the piece around gathering, what anyone listening to this space is, maybe you're like, never going to make it to a festival because I don't want to, or I don't have the funds to, or I have a family. How could that ever happen? Maybe I'm not going to go to a yoga retreat. Maybe I'm not going to go to that concert in town. The two simplest forms of creating these gatherings are already being engaged by people. And these are tangibles that anyone can do, and they're already engaged in them. It's just bringing more intention and awareness to why, which is the hearth. Circling up around a fire is one of our most ancient ways of connecting with one another. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a candle because you live in a high fire danger zone, or you have a bonfire because you live in a place that's super moist and you don't have to worry about forest fires. And so that actual tangible hearth of having a fire to gather around, to share stories, song, or just to be in silence with one another and not feel that we have to fill the space with anything. That's what most of our collective is so uncomfortable with, which is just spaciousness. Even on a podcast right now. And so in that, the other complement to that is the hearth of the kitchen. It's the main gathering space. So when we come and break bread together, these are the most primal ways of when we say event production or experience design. This is tangible for every human on the planet. And even if it's a takeout food, if you don't actually have your own kitchen, because there's a lot of people out here that don't actually have their own kitchen. So we're speaking to everyone here. And that's been part of my work, is how do I not alienate people with my language and bridge and be responsible for the dialogue and the wordsmithing while still not fully watering it down. There's still going to be some of the language that's like, what did he say? I got to get my dictionary out. And in that, I feel it's very important to name that. So there's these large festival productions that take so much energy to produce. And to be fully honest, that model is over. These last years, we've seen globally how these medium and large scale festivals aren't viable on an eclectic array. And so what is more land stewardship. And that's where my story comes in with walking with wisdom keepers and my devotional path with the lands of Ecuador and the story of cacao, and having a privilege now to walk with elders and wisdom keepers and aunties and uncles so that I can orient myself to even speak the piece of, well, how does the every person gather? It's like, have a fire, invite your neighbors over that you maybe have never met before, or your kin that you only see at the holy days that everyone prescribes to, or have a meal. And so that feels like a beautiful segue into, because I could riff on that all day in this collective recalibration of how we gather. And so unless there's another piece you want to touch on that, we could go back to your question a few moments ago on the origin story of, hey, Jamie, have you always been like this? And I said, I sure haven't. I mean, my nature always was, but I had to remember.
Right. No,
Yeah.
that feels like a good place to transition there.
Beautiful. Yeah. One of the powerful thinkers, and I would go to say sages of our time, even though he'd look at me and be like, come on, Jamie, I'm not a sage of our time, is Charles Eisenstein. I've had a privilege of sharing space with him, and long before I shared physical space with him, especially during the lockdown period where we were in global lockdown, I listened to him on every podcast. I read as many essays as I could. And one thing I loved when he was in podcasts, and one thing I loved about listening to him, is he would slow down and he would make podcast hosts so nervous. And he would be asked a question and he would say, how do I want to share this? And he wasn't thinking about how he wanted to say it. In my perspective, he was going through his Rolodex of all the ways he could interpret what his response to the prompt was.
Mhm.
And what I gathered in that, he was also taking into account, because he's on so many podcasts, who the audience was.
Yeah.
And what was most important, not for him to say, but for the audience to receive. And so the name of this is Rise to Thrive. The name of your podcast is Rise to Thrive. I've felt the two of you in that very tributary. As you named, that butterfly and mariposa
Yeah.
just came right
Just
by.
saw
Let's go.
that.
Oh, great spirit. We are so
Hey.
protected and covered. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Just perched up here on this umbrella.
No.
And that aspect of the Rise to Thrive also ensues that we've had a fall. So how do I want to share this piece of my origin story concisely? I also love that there's a little time ticker and it's in red at the top of this screen as we are remotely. I'm checking in from
No
the Great
pressure.
Lakes region, North Woods of Wisconsin, where I grew up going to summer camp. You know, my family, I came from lower working class, blue collar. My father was a master carpenter and my mother is a stay-at-home mom. I grew up in the cornfields of northern Illinois. We're actually the origin story of what we see globally now as this yellow number 7 corn was created in this small town, as well as barbed wire was invented. The town I grew up in exemplifies what most refer to as the Midwest of the United States, which if we look at it's actually the Middle East, just between us.
And
if
I
we would look
always
at the
ask
map.
that
But
question.
it
I'm
was
like,
the
where are they
Midwest
coming
when the Mississippi was the border.
Got it.
So there was a
Gotcha,
moment where
okay.
the Mississippi was the border of what we call the United States. And also to preface, I've always been a nerd on history. I've always been in this piece. Like I was watching the History Channel as a little boy.
Yeah.
And so growing up, automatically I didn't fit into my family unit, and a lot of us can relate to that. And I saw my mother as a stay-at-home mom, cooked every meal. I saw my mother go back to school. When I was in high school, I have 2 older siblings. They're identical twins. They're 5 years older than me. And I watched my mother go back and get her associates and get her bachelor's and get her master's and become a marriage and family therapist. One of my core memories of growing up was my mom cooked every meal, and we didn't eat organic and we didn't eat that way, but we did eat every meal together. And I remember the grocery store was called Eagle in DeKalb, Illinois. And I remember what typically would take a family of 5, maybe an hour to grocery shop. We'd be there for 3 hours.
Dang.
And I remember having my part of the list, you know, little super blondie, blue-eyed, just bebopping through the aisles. And I'd have my part of the list. And when I'd come back to put it in my mom's cart, I would observe and witness my mother with somebody I'd never met, and that person would be fully in tears in aisle 7. This is before she went back to be a therapist. And then I'd go get my list, and this was normalized for me. And then I come back, aisle 6, a different person, same outcome. I watched my mother just being space. And so it was intuitive for me to pick up on that. That's in juxtaposition to, I can very clearly name, I never associated with trauma. I was associated with trauma as being locked in a cage or being beaten or not being fed, everything that media had fed me. But I didn't have the language until my early 30s to name that my core trauma was my core wound, which was my core father wound. Having an emotionally unavailable father shame me for being a very emotional boy. Go cry to your mother. Boys don't cry. Toughen up. Oh, just go be with your sisters. I can't deal with you. I heard those regularly, as well as the most common phrase, my way or the highway. Interesting thing about that too is when I chose the highway, I was also made wrong for that. Now, I went through my years of anger, not just at my father, but as a collective society. It wasn't just him. So once I was able to see that, I was able to heal from this father wound. And now at this cabin in the North Woods of Wisconsin, be at the the feet Everest of my biggest trigger. And as we were talking about before we go on this, allow that to be my orienting mechanism. So my origin story is a beautiful marker now with not how far I've come, but in the age of when we say sacred act of remembrance, we must first engage with the act of unforgetting as a collective. We're in the age of the forgotten. We have forgot who we come from. I am now reclaiming my ancestry through my Irish line, through my father, who didn't know anything past his grandparents' name. Same with the German line of my mother. I didn't grow up in a household of prayer and of offerings to the land and of I was modeled compassion by my mother, but it was also overshadowed by my father's inability to connect with his emotional state, see others' perspectives as valid. And the most important piece, which is he worked so hard to provide for us. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm so grateful for that core wound, because throughout my teenage years, and then as soon as I graduated high school, I moved into Chicago, which was only 2 hours away, but might as well have been worlds away. I originally went to culinary school, then transferred to a community college, and then finished with a degree from the University of Illinois at Chicago in PR marketing and mass communication. And during that time, I managed one of the country's oldest cupcake emporiums. Shout out Swirls Cupcakes. If anybody listening has ever had a Swirls Cupcake, this is at the beginning of the cupcake craze, and Pam Rose, my first true mentor. And I named these pieces because throughout all that time, I still prescribed to the world I was taught, which was heavy drinking. I grew up drinking with my family at age of 13, heavy drinking by 15, 16, parties at the house, blackout drinking in Chicago throughout those years, a heavy drinking culture.
Mm-hmm.
I was always encouraged from a young age because of what people perceived to be. That's great. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
All the sprinklers just came
Sprinklers.
on. Yeah. So this just gonna fade in.
Oh.
Blessed be
Oh,
my
no, we're
dad
good.
for
I think-
dialing in the curation. And so I share these pieces because there's a part of how I walk my walk now that is very unrelatable for most people.
Mm-hmm.
Most people see me as like, oh, must be easy for that guy. Must not have had any challenges in his life. And these pieces, I'm no different from my origin story, from the place I came from.
Mm.
And growing up in that, I was just modeled that this is just what you do.
Mm-hmm.
You just drink through the weekends, you deal with the hangover early in the week, and then you rinse and repeat and do it all over again. And this is the point of connection, of belonging. And I didn't know any better. I didn't have elders and wisdom keepers. And so I didn't even have, it wasn't until I was 24 years old that I had a committed relationship. It was a very player archetype, very sleeping with multiple people and having that be the story thread line that I thought I was supposed to live into. And then at the age of 26, after a bad breakup, I didn't have any tools. I launched myself into the void for the very first time, meaning I gave away all my worldly possessions in Chicago. I packed a bag and I booked a one-way ticket to Colorado, and planes, trains, automobiles, hitchhiking, along with the book Jack Kerouac's On the Road, launched myself into the Western front. And then about 6 months later, I was starting to get really sick. And at the age of 26, broke. I returned to my parents' doorstep after traveling the West, Oregon, Washington, NorCal, back through Colorado, and collapsed at my parents' doorstep. Nobody had communication with me. This is before really Instagram. And for the next 3 months, I was in and out of the hospital, and they couldn't find out what was wrong with me. And I knew I wasn't going to get healthy in the Midwest. I knew that I had left for a reason, not just because of the breakup, but Spirit was calling me to another place. And against the doctor's wishes, against my parents' wishes, against all my family, at this point, I was going to the bathroom 20 times a day. I was bleeding in all of my stools. I was down to 115 pounds. I'm 6 foot, typically like 165, 170. Skinny guy, can't be down to 115. I was dehydrated, malnourished. And they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I knew I know now I have the language, but it was my guides. It was the intuitive nature that was trying to come through. And a buddy in Seattle, shout out Zach, was like, hey, man, I didn't want you to leave when you passed through. We went to college together in Chicago. I have my home. We'll worry about rent when we worry about it. And so on January 3rd of 2012, I booked the last airfare I had, landed in Seattle to a voicemail from my doctor saying it was ulcerative colitis, an inflammatory disease of the colon. And I moved to Seattle. This will give you, y'all know the Pacific Northwest. Broke,
Yep.
heartbroken, with a diagnosis of a chronic disease, moving into a basement with no windows. Again, the beginning of January in the Pacific Northwest, not really the most sunshine-filled space.
Definitely not.
And that is my most grateful moment. That is a moment where Spirit was saying, Jamie, you have a path here in this world, but now you have a choice. And so when I had my next doctor's appointment and they said they wanted 6 to 12 pills of medication to start, or removal of my colon, which would have left me at 26 with a colostomy bag, I left and I never went back. And I spent a decade healing. And so
Wow.
to keep a synopsis on this story, because there's so many things I could share, I dove deep into the yoga world at this moment, but I'll fast forward a little bit. Because my origin story I'm so grateful for now. And this has come with walking with elders and wisdom keepers. I come with offerings of tobacco. I come with prayers to the waters. But over that course of that decade, I did everything to heal physically. I started down the path of mental. It was still not until those mid-30s of deep spirituality. Deep into the yoga world, I had healed from a lot of symptoms, but I was still having flare-ups. And so even though I grew up in glyphosate, yellow number 7 cornfields, I grew up in households that had chemicals like Tide and all of the pieces that break down our ability to fight off infection. Once I found the root cause, everything changed. And so I'll share this piece as a preface and then we'll throw it to you guys, which is I was in a relationship for 6 years. During this time frame of healing, I used to open new markets for CorePower Yoga. The last market was Phoenix, so I moved there, didn't know anybody, and over the course of 3 years, built out 5 studios, and also started a powerful relationship with my most intimate relationship with this woman who I won't use her name because I don't have permission to. And fast forward, we left that time and we landed sideways in the Columbia River Gorge in the fall of 2019. And we all know what happened that next March.
Yep.
During a wild blow up. And I won't say it as eloquently as she did, but she knew intuitively she needed a rattle. She said, "You're a nerd on research. You love taking things apart and putting them back together. You're a builder and a designer. Why are you unwilling to do this with yourself?" Trevor Hall is my most intimate musician, guide, sage, and I listened to the song called The Weaver right after that. And there's a line in it that says, "Turn your gaze within and start knocking on your door." From that moment, I went in. That's when I identified core father wound. That's when I began what has turned into 5 years of celibacy. Didn't plan for it to be 5 years, guys. Just saying that right out of the gate. The prayer is to emerge from that, but it's just not time, apparently. And I went in. And so that root cause was then identifying that core father wound. Emotional suppression, especially for us men, orients itself in the digestive system and in the rectum. This is why this rampant disease of colon cancer is in men and women, but mostly in men. And so once I identified that, everything changed. And I started bringing in things like fasting, and we're going to get intimate, urine therapy, and all these other modalities. And so,
first of all, you're not the first person to talk about urine therapy on our podcast.
Beautiful. Love that.
Continue
and so
on.
I'll share this last piece and throw it back to you guys because I've been speaking for a few moments, which is I've experimented on myself in all of the ways. Traveled all the way around the world these last years, much time in Ecuador, not only reclaiming the origin story of cacao, but also sitting with wisdom keepers, being in these medicine circles. So grateful for our plant allies, our cactus allies, all of our allies that support us in orienting ourselves. I have taken myself to the edge of the known civilization as an explorer, and my responsibility is, one, to find that place of healing. And with our collective so focused on healing, there's very few conversations about what happens when I'm just at baseline. Which is, I love the name of your podcast and how you guys live your life, which is that next aspect is how do we thrive? How do we access vitality in our human experience? Because so much focus is on healing. And so I'm checking in here, vital, thriving, 14 years after that diagnosis. Again, my human clock turns 41 this year. And I feel great sharing that because age has never been a thing for me, but it is supportive for other people to orient to the age of someone else that they perceive to be in a space of supporting others in that realm.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's a bit of my origin story. So I'd love to hear what comes up for the two of you.
Whew. I mean, thank you for going there, first of all, because I think that paints in so much context for where you are now and everything you're doing for people to hear, and even for us to hear
Yeah.
some of the struggles and where you grew up and the household dynamic. It really humanizes, people who have done the work and are embodied, and like you said, the regulated nervous system. And it's such a joy to connect, the young parts of myself with the young parts of you. And I really appreciate that. And yeah, it's such a beautiful walk that you've had, and you have such an eloquent way of sharing it that I think a lot of people listening can relate to. I just got a little distracted. Somebody walked in. I apologize. We'll cut this part.
Okay. We love the
Or we
pauses,
leave
though.
it.
We're here for the
It's-
pause.
yeah, we're
I
here for the
mean,
sacred
yeah,
pauses. Let's
like,
leave it.
last-
It's
The
my,
sacred
my
pause.
birthday
Yeah.
podcast, I was like, cut. But he did not cut
Yeah.
any of that. so.
Shout out to Brooks' dad.
Yeah. Speaking of fathers, family,
Yeah.
we are
Family.
immersed here with my family as well.
Yeah.
But back
And
to you,
same-
Matt.
And same here. And this is the realness of it. If like we were having a conversation, obviously I just had a bit of a monologue in that. And that's what I appreciate this space to be.
Mhm.
Because there's
Yeah.
like the realness is what people in this world want. There's so much glossed over, and there's no wrong with that. We still need
Mhm.
that piece.
Mhm.
And in that, there's the realness of, yeah, you could edit this and cut this up. And that's the piece that allows people to be like, oh, they are human. Okay.
Right.
I can follow the wisdom that they're sharing. I can see them as a leader for me, because we as a people, we've been shown that leaders can't be trusted. And so we're in this great change right now of this
Mhm.
ancient future of all these wordplay that we could use with it. But the truth is, we have a trust issue on a collective. And when we reclaim that responsibility of trusting ourselves, we can then clearly identify who we are to follow, and not the guru model that I have seen in the yoga world, in the mixed movement world, in the healing worlds, in the medicine ceremony worlds. Like, these are the conversations that are going to support others feeling that they can go and open themselves up in vulnerability, because there can be no transformation without vulnerability. So anyone raising the banner for let's change, but still have blockages, again, no right or wrong, of how to access that vulnerability to be seen. Our core wound of belonging is also prefaced by the inability of being seen, as his children saying, be unseen, be in the corner. And then, there's a piece that came through of like, we don't have an epidemic of children with attention deficit disorder. We have an epidemic of children that we haven't paid attention to.
Yeah.
We don't have an epidemic of memory loss and Alzheimer's and dementia. We have an epidemic of forgetting our elders and our wisdom keepers and our elders. And so when we reframe the script, of course they're going to forget themselves because they've been put away in a home.
Yeah.
Of course our children are going to be in this quote unquote hyperactive space and be medicated because we've told them to fall in line. I'm no different than that. And I don't mean to overgeneralize that, but it's a piece where all the things that we've been told that are diseases are symptoms of a piece of disconnection. It always comes back to that.
Yeah. There's just so many parts of your story and your share that we could go down, from, you uncovering the emotional piece that was really connected at the root to your root, which was causing the bowel issues, and how important that piece plays in the role of healing. I mean, so much of what we talk about is the nutrition and the detoxification on a physical level. But with that, it's really important to be doing the work and the knocking on the inner door, like you mentioned, of what are the emotional pieces that are connected with those spaces. And just the way that you framed that piece about the Alzheimer's, like, and forgetting the elders and putting them away to some, back room somewhere, like, that's a deep heartbreak that I felt on my walk as well.
Mm.
And getting the privilege to travel like you to some of these countries where the elders are valued and are still very much a part of the tribe and the community, and they're revered, and we sit and we listen to them speak. I've been in malokas and rooms of elders speaking, being in tears because of the privilege that it was to be able to sit and have the opportunity to listen to these stories, to hear this wisdom, and to be able to ask questions, because that's such a piece that's missing
Mm-hmm.
in the West and, you know, in North America. And I'm interested to hear. Do you want to offer something?
Well, I'd love to hear what you're interested to hear.
Well, my interest is tying it back to your time in Ecuador. I mean, it's been almost a year since we met and since we've spent time with you. And I'm curious what the last, almost a year has been like for you. And what does your time in Ecuador look like? Spending time with those elders and deepening your studies with cacao, and how have things shifted for you in what you walk with and what you bring to whether it's the spaces of men's work, the production work, and beyond?
It's a great question. And the piece of my grandparents had Alzheimer's and dementia on my father's side. So anyone listening that is like, oh, they feel a certain way, like there's no disrespect in naming how serious that epidemic is of our time. It's using the metaphor of how we have pushed certain people to certain relegated places in our society, and we've forgotten about them. And we see it as show up in our disconnection. So just want to be really clear on that piece. I prayed for years on this path of eldership. I had been going to Ecuador, over to Bali, over to the land of my father's bloodline, Ireland, and I was praying for elders. So long before they came into my world and realm, I prayed for them. I knew I needed guidance. I knew I had the cacao came into my field, what I call my sacred act of remembrance, on a mountaintop with 50 men, East, which is Mount Hood for most people in Oregon. Prophetic. I mean, it hadn't rained in 9 months. Bryce was serving it. It started raining. It's exactly some of these stories, for those who are listening, we don't even have to make it sound mythic for it to be the new myth. And that's part of, I know, the design of what people see as Jamie Lightheart is to weave the story, to plant seeds of belief in others, to spark curiosity and wonder with what is possible, and then have tangible routes to be able to influence their lifestyle choices and show up as the change they're calling in the world. And in that, there comes a point where an elder would come into a space and they would ask, are the people dancing? Who are the elders? And when was the last time that the men circled? Because there's a known piece that even though it's had to be in hiding, women still have been circling up. Many people forget that the Salem witch trials and these pieces were super far like in our history. Like, it was not that long ago. And I won't go into that right now because that'll open a whole piece. But to look at our history of humanity and look where we've come to this moment in time, that years ago, when I was first sitting with the medicine of cacao and starting to build altars and didn't really know what I was doing, and everybody around me, Bryce and Tiff and some of the other people in my core circle were like, what is cacao speaking with you? And I was even just coming to the language that a plant was communicating with me. And this is coming in a moment too, whereas my mom remembers who she is, I'm offering an audible book of braiding sweetgrass, which is super influential on my journey too. This beautiful narrative. If you haven't read it or listened to the audible, please check it out. I receive no funds from plugging this, but I will plug it to the
Highly
ethers.
recommend.
Highly recommended. It was intuitive from me. If you guys haven't already noticed, I just have a full send kind of spirit. It's been my whole life. It was very challenging for my father. It was challenging for my mother just in a safety standpoint. She always left me with make good choices, remember who you are. My father always said, you can't do everything, bud. My family calls me Bud.
You can't do everything,
Bud. And
Let me
I was
try.
like, well, why not try? Why not try? It's a wild world out here. There's so many things. And that was growing up in the flatlands of Illinois. Like
Yeah.
once I started getting into mountains and these places. So years ago, exhausting all my resources online with educating myself on cacao, not just the mystical, mythical, spiritual, but also the tangible scientific pieces. Like the aroma cacao has 800 chemical compounds. It's the most diverse, dynamic plant ally of any on the planet. And that's not in a hierarchical sense. I do believe that cacao is our highest plant ally in humanity. And I'll share why in a moment. When I exhausted all of those resources of sitting with the medicine, of beginning to serve in men's circles, serving women in co-ed, it was just a pulse that said, well, the next thing is you go to the place where this cacao's coming in from. And Bryce was getting it from a dear brother, Juan Carlos, who is Ecuadorian, who lives in Petaluma, California. And so I knew it was Ecuadorian cacao. And so I booked a one-way ticket to Ecuador with the romantic vision that cacao was flooding the streets, that you turn faucets on and cacao was pouring out, that this was seen as medicine. And when I landed in Quito my first time, it was quite the antithesis. Cacao was barely seen as a commodity, let alone a medicine. And so my prayer carried me into the Amazon, the edge of the Amazon, in between the Andes and the Amazon, in a place called Archidona, with a beautiful man named Bolivar, who was the first. My prayer was to go work with farmers and go see how this, what we call ceremonial cacao at origin, is called pasta de cacao. It's just cacao paste. And so I learned in the old ways of how to harvest, of how to process, taking the fruiting pod and opening it up, and the sweet dulce, the white, just, oh, it's so divine. And the fermentation process, the drying process, the roasting and grinding it into what we call a paste. And once I started to open myself up to these lands started opening themselves up to me. Once I learned how to walk with offerings and come in a humble way. And so that was many moons ago now. And the explorer in me, these last years, I can, if we speak of archetypes, many people's entry point, as mine was, is king, magician, warrior, lover, like the book that supports so many, and Carl Jung and the Jungian philosophy of all these different ways of archetype. I believe there's an infinite array of archetypes within each of us. Some of them are only unique to our genetic makeup. If you look at gene keys and all these pieces of what our purpose is for being in our life's work. And one of the pieces of these last years is, I'll use this analogy, which is, many people speak of bridge building. I'm a bridge builder, building bridges, spanning gaps. As a carpenter, I've been a carpenter my whole life because my father was a builder. My nerd out, how my mind works, always goes to the etymology of a word or the origin of the process. And so years ago, it's like, okay, bridge builder, I get it. What has to happen before the bridge is ever built? Long before the bridge is ever built, the scout and the surveyor have to go into the unknown, have to go and then come back with data and the beta, so that we can say, okay, we can't build a bridge here, but upriver during the dry season, we could build a bridge. Then that gets passed off to the engineers and the architects and the designers. And simultaneously, while that's happening, there's a group getting it funded and getting all the permits pulled through, if we're in a place that gets permits pulled through. And then it transfers to the actual building and construction team, which then has to create footings in the earth to even hold the bridge to span. And then once the bridge is built, there has to be people that tend to the bridge. So I share that because we go from one archetype that's used widely to a cast of characters. And once we orient to that space in a group setting, I can see what my role is. Now introduce my path to Ecuador, and then bamboo enters, and cacao, and this walk with being an advocate for the medicine of cacao and bamboo that are at the spearhead of a revolution on this planet. And then I begin walking with elders and wisdom keepers, and I'm able to orient myself in this world and be able to walk in a way that utilizes story as medicine. So now, years later, since we last saw each other, I went back to Ecuador in January, was there for another 3 months. In the last year, I was there for 6 out of the 12. I exhausted my visa. And now I have a lot. The first time I went there, I didn't know anybody. Second time in there, I didn't really know anybody. Now I have a lot of soul fam. a lot of people in the medicine community with Sempero and Wachuma, the different Aya communities. It's not my medicine that I've ever reached to, but the medicines have come to me. I've been around it more than I've actually sat with it. And it's that discernment for each of us of, are we reaching to the medicines, or are the medicines truly reaching to us? And I believe one of the most powerful engagements with our mindset is discernment. What is my why? What is my intention? And my intention now with the story of cacao, this time last year, I was in Ecuador. I was going with my dear, who made this cup, Lau and Mateo, and they were taking me to the site, Santa Ana la Florida, in the south of Ecuador, almost to the border of Peru, that holds the oldest known story of cacao. And I'm sitting in the center tomb. And we have access to this place because of the deep access that my friends have had. La Ruta de Cacao, maybe we could put that in the show notes too, is a documentary on this space, is the place that predates the first usage of cacao 1,500 years before the Mayans and the Olmecs. And so in an age of oration, as we're entering back into a society that shares stories orally, there was no stone tablets like the Mayans perfectly did. We're so grateful for the Mayan culture and the Olmecs because they etched in stories that we could see how they engage with day-to-day life, what their deities were, how they perceive cacao. In a society like the Andean Cordillera, in their cosmology, they didn't have tablets, but they had pottery, which is the language of a peoples of oration. And so in the center tomb, this is great, and this will be our segue because I feel like we're maybe getting close to the top of our hour here, is 18 years ago, they were cutting in a road. And this is at a very peculiar spot. The Andean Cordillera, the whole mountain range, is actually two mountain ranges that meets right where we call the border of Peru and Ecuador. And it's called, what's the knot called? It's called something knot, where there's two small transverse mountain ranges. And a place called Palanda has Santa Ana la Florida. And then there's a place on the Peruvian side called Huaca Monte Grande. And these were found similar times. And 18 years ago, they were cutting in a road and they hit a wall. And this is a very remote spot. Like the town maybe has 800 people that live in it. They hit a wall and they uncovered the form of a spiral. And in the center of that spiral, they found ceramics next to tombs that had wide-ranging from children to elders. And in the center tomb, they found the ceramics of 3 pots. One that held the residue of coca, which is a high Andean revered medicine, maíz en la forma de chicha, so corn in the form of chicha, which is another Andean medicine, fermented corn, and the other was cacao. And this site is 5,500 years old, orienting us to the first time that cacao, humanity, had a connection with spirit. And as I sit in the center tomb, this was another piece that a year and a half ago when it was brought into my friend, I was like, I got to go there. And so I went. And when I'm sitting in the center tomb and I come with my offerings, of course, the little boy in me, the little boy is like, and a spirit's going to come up from the center and say, Jamie, we've been waiting for you. Thank you for coming.
Yes.
Of course, the little boy wants that. He's been an explorer his whole life, and now he's got a place to explore. You know, one of the only reasons we say masculine alchemy and feminine alchemy is so that the third jewel, like masculine, feminine, and the divine child, has a place to play. Similar to our intuition of the heart, our instinct of our digestive system, and the intellect of the mind, these 3 jewels that bring us into orientation of this human existence and experience. But what did happen in that center tomb, as I'm offering cacao, maybe for the first time since it's been exposed, and I'm listening, the overwhelming sense of responsibility. Because we live in a time where most people don't know that heirloom cacao is in danger of existential crisis, meaning we have hybridized cacao so much to feed the global need of chocolate. And 2 years ago, 75% of cacao just vanished from non-native growing Cote d'Ivoire in Ghana that has 2 million children in child labor. And what that did was that put pressure on places like Guatemala, the Yucatan, which is modern-day Mexico, Chiapas is the highest producing place, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, which produce the finest cacao on the planet, but not the most abundance of what's called CCN51. The cacao from Ecuador is called Nacional Fino de Aroma, which is a Criollo variety, which is the original. And so I share that because in that moment in the center tomb, offering this, feeling the sense of responsibility, was to utilize story to spark curiosity in others so that they began to believe that there was another way. Because the truth is, the world's favorite food is chocolate. But the world has no idea why the world's favorite food is chocolate.
Mm.
And it's not the sugar and it's not the milk fats. It's because of cacao. So the world has been sitting with cacao their entire life. Whether we were in the womb of our mother, whether we were at a funeral or a wedding, whether it was a 3 o'clock on a Wednesday, or whether it was a birthday celebration. The medicine of cacao is woven through the human tapestry our entire lives. And now is a moment where I believe we bring more awareness to where it comes from. We can support more trees being planted, which is a part of Corazón de Luz cacao, which is what I just launched at the festival last weekend, to purchase more clear-cut land in places of Ecuador, plant heirloom cacao trees along with bamboo, and invite First Nations people back onto their land, put the land in trust so that nobody else can purchase it, and revitalize ancestral wisdom through walking in these ways. And so that's a bit of this story of path of this love story with Ecuador.
Amazing.
Yeah. Let me breathe that in.
Yeah.
Very important work you're doing, Jamie. Thank you for the reverence you walk with and the care and the interest and curiosity that you bring to the path, because yes, it has me reflecting on our use with it, because we get the privilege to enjoy it pretty frequently. And there's times when we take a break from daily ingesting of cacao, and I think it's really important to bring back more of that intention, more of that reverence, more of that remembering where it came from, and also doing what we can to help to preserve the wisdom, but also the plant itself, and to be out there planting trees and protecting land and bringing the indigenous people back to work with it in the ways that they do is really important for the longevity and the sustainability of more people being able to enjoy that medicine. So
yeah, it's our favorite. I mean,
hey,
it's my favorite medicine. I remember coming across it too and just feeling so drawn to this. I'm like, what is this? I started working with it more. I found a chocolate maker when I moved to Portland, and she had been working intimately with it, and I dove in and was part of the process, kind of like you. I'm just like, how does it all work? I'm being so enthralled in that and having my daily ceremonies with it. And so, yeah, I've been connected to it as well. And like you too, I never actually got to go to the origin, but that's always how I felt. I'm like, I need to go to the origin of this medicine. It's how I felt with yoga. I had to go do my yoga teacher training in India. Like, I needed to be immersed in the land from which it was birthed. So I appreciate that desire to go and follow the thread to like really know it, and I can only imagine what that journey was like into the tomb. Like, oh my God, how insane and beautiful that you were chosen to go there, guided by spirit to go there. So thank you for carrying that story and the wisdom and just everything that Matt said. And it's such an honor to know you and to be able to be in ceremony with you in the way that you hold the space with cacao is literally on a whole other level that I've never experienced before. So, yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate y'all. And I thank you for this dialogue and, and being open to having me on here. And I've gone completely bonkers, completely mad. I've had to check in so many times. Am I really making this up, or am I being communicated to by a plant? And there's nobody that can say anything otherwise. Because I look at it, it's like my elder shares, like, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. We truly are the myth makers. And story gets such a bad rap in these circles. It gets such a negative connotation. Oh, what story are you creating? What story are you still living? And so if we're going to use that, it's important. We need to be able to use that for people. But when we speak of rise to thrive, I'm always gonna weave the name back in, guys. Come on now.
I love it.
Is he gonna answer the question
Take notes, future guests. Connecting back to the podcast name and intention. Nobody's done that more frequently than you.
Thank you
So thank
for
you.
reminding us. This is
again,
it.
again, the piece of, and because it means something. It's a part of the story. And I also get out of my own way. For example, I've been very resistant to creating what's called a brand around cacao because, one, I see what's out there. I see people, and no right or wrong, just putting abuela on the cover. And then when I deep dive into what their vetting processes is and what there's some gaps and there's opportunity for all of us. But the piece around etymology and where these phrases and things come from is like brand comes from taking hot iron to the skin of an animal and claiming ownership. And that's been very challenging for me. Yet now, Corazon de Luz Cacao, I created the logo. I had a whole booth that I had a team work at and offer the medicine at High Vibe Festival for the first time. And so the best way I can be an advocate for the story and follow through on this vision and this responsibility from Spirit to purchase up clear-cut land, which there's so much through all of the jungle land in South America, replant heirloom cacao so our children and our children's children have access to heirloom ancestral varieties, because right now there's people cutting down their own healthy cacao groves because of the pressure for just the modified CCN51. So this moment is also bringing more awareness, because how can somebody goes, I'm not going to go to Ecuador, Jamie. How can I make an impact?
Yeah.
You can vote with your dollar. When you go to the grocery store and you get that chocolate bar, it's going to be a few dollars more. And I have people that call me up. They're like, Jamie, I'm really not happy with you. I'm like, why? Like, I just spent an hour in the chocolate aisle at the grocery store because I couldn't find what you asked for. And so if on the packaging, they don't say place of origin, they don't tell you where it's from, they're hiding something. They put millions of dollars into the packaging and they're hiding that it's just this conglomeration of beans from across the world. And so you can vote with your dollar. The other way is finding access. There's more available now than ever. You don't have to purchase it through me, but Corazon de Luz is available. Of what we call
link in the show notes.
Yeah, look in the show notes. And just having more conversations around it. And so I'll in closing, I'll share this final piece, which is giving yourself the gift of permission to believe. Give yourself the gift of permission to believe. Not only that the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible, but it's in the here and now. Somebody says, well, what does it mean to walk with elders? The simplest way, they could be aunties and wisdom keepers. Observe them. Our most radical act in this world is to slow down. This is the core wisdom teaching of cacao, is to slow down and feel. Yes, the core wisdom teachings of compassion, acceptance, forgiveness, divine childlike wonder and play, eros, passion, pleasure. These are all teachings of cacao. Yet the core wisdom teaching is to slow down and to feel. And when you apply that to walking with wisdom keepers, the simplest way is most aren't going to be in the ceremonies with copal and the medicines flowing in a maloca. But you can watch how that elder moves across the room. You can watch how they put a tea kettle on. We can observe and take witness of how they open and close a door. The mystic mundane is what I like to refer to those as. Those have every teaching that you could have. And also, if you are looking to walk with elders in a way, I can be a wayshower for that. My elder takes many people out for Vision Quest. It takes many people out for a program him and his beloved Megan, Mark Tollefson and Megan have Thrive, which is walking in ancestral ways in a modern world. And so there's so many resources now. And my role is to not be a gatekeeper. It's to be an open sourced wayshower. So once I get my website back up and running, which you'll have a link to, you'll have access to not only what I have to offer in services, but also the people in my core hearth that tend to me. And it feels beautiful to call the two of you a part of that hearth. So I really appreciate you and love you guys.
Oh, bless you, brother.
We love you too. Yeah. Well, with that being said,
do we dare ask the final question?
The final question. Dun, 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 dun.
Dun, dun, dun. All right, Jamie Lightheart. Take a sip before you answer this. Yep. Yep.
Shout out to my dear sister Lau. Okay, the final question.
Shout out Lau.
Shout out Lau.
Final question for you today. What does it mean to you to live a thriving life?
To live a thriving life is our birthright. To live a thriving life is to access the genius that lays at the altar of the heart. To live a thriving life is beyond healing. It's accessing vitality to fully express what the spirit is attempting to manifest into the world through this beautiful meat suit, through this avatar. And to rise to thrive is to choose. To thrive is to know that I always have a choice. I get to decide in this moment. And I choose vitality. I choose to walk in a good way. I choose reciprocity. I choose offerings. To thrive is to come with offerings before an expectation to receive. To honor the land, to honor the spirits, to honor those who have come before. A thriving life is the beauty way, the middle way, the good red road. And with that, I'm steeped in gratitude to have a privilege and the great trust that Spirit has to walk in a thriving way.
Beautiful, brother. I know you did mention your new website is going to be coming online. Your brand of cacao, dare I say brand,
Oh, he
is
said it.
available.
I'm getting out of my own way. It feels good.
Is going to be
I
it.
mean, you could also reframe it. What came to me when we're talking about brand, because we kind of have the same feelings about it, is like Rise to Thrive is really a ministry, and your ministry is your way of being in the world, right?
Come on now.
So, I don't know, just food for thought. Not that you have to do what we're doing, but just a new way of renaming that in a way that feels good. You know, if the branding feels like contraction, then what does feel good and right to you? And that's always open to change. But
yeah,
I feel like
I really I appreciate that. And it is me getting out of my own way. As my elder Mark shares, not too holy, Jamie. I see you.
Not too holy.
He's a very holy man. He's looking up at me. He's like, and I know what he means because I was so malnourished and dehydrated from a connection from spirit for 30 plus years. And so I'm walking a line and I want to be honoring and respectful. And in that, he said, not too holy, Jamie. I see you. So Corazon de Luz is live. It's Ecuadorian Fino de Roma Nacional Cacaocita. It's also going to bridge into being a co-op so that others have a place to sell their cacao from around the world. So it's not just where I'm coming from. Leader in the men's work movement, Sacred Sons. We have Remembrance 3 coming up, as you guys have already named, in August.
Whoop, whoop.
Well, I'll be there.
It's a powerful prayer on the Cellular Sea. For those of you who are going to be at Medicine Fest in the UK outside of London, I'll be overseeing all cacao served with a Guatemalan elder. And that's really powerful, a really powerful prayer. And also at a principle, like the story as medicine. And so to be a storyteller, first I must receive the story and then see where it applies. So with that shared, thank you for being a part of your story of Rise to Thrive. I love y'all. So grateful to be here with you and look forward to circling up with you in person in 2 months' time.
Whoop, whoop.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you for being here, brother. Appreciate you taking the time and sharing your wisdom and presence with us. I don't take that for granted. And to our audience who was listening, if you've made it this far, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of these conversations. Please do what you can to like, comment, subscribe, share with your people. And until next time.
Stay thriving, y'all. Or begin to thrive a little bit more, wherever you are.
Insert cliche saying here.
Live, laugh, love. Live, laugh, love.
Rise
See you in the next one, y'all.
All right.
Bye
Much
for
love,
now.
y'all. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.